Welcome to Bold Agendas, a series of thought leadership podcasts dedicated to the discussion of transformation management. In each podcast, we discuss a topic of strategic interest to business leaders who are guiding their organizations through transformative change. We live in an age where business leaders feel intense pressure to adapt to new technologies, manage increasingly diverse and remote teams, spearhead strategic business architectures, and achieve ever more ambitious results. Change is a leader's constant companion. Whether it's setting goals and objectives, improving communications, enhancing strategic thinking, or providing decision-making support, the executive coach has become increasingly relevant in the quest for entrepreneurial excellence. There are no off-the-shelf approaches in coaching. For coaching to work well, the relationship between the coach and the individual is of utmost importance. It's this secret sauce that brings to light tried and trusted methods and tools influencers can use to affect real improvements in organizational performance. To that end, I'm privileged to welcome René Sonneveld. René is a leadership coach with a rich background in elevating C-level executives, entrepreneurs, corporate teams, and even athletes. His expertise spans industries and continents, from Europe to South America to the US, giving him a global perspective on leadership challenges and opportunities. With a career that started in international tax law and evolved into global leadership roles at UBS, Deutsche Bank, and Citibank, René brings a unique blend of corporate governance, senior executive development, and family business coaching. René is also a master instructor of leadership coaching for organizational performance, an ICF-certified executive coaching program held through American, NC State, and Rutgers universities. This is where I first met René, as he was one of my instructors when I went through this program at American University. This will be an insightful discussion on leadership coaching in a changing organizational system with new challenges and norms emerging, and I'm grateful to have René here to share his expertise and ideas. I'm Mimi Brooks. I'm the CEO of Logical Design Solutions, a business strategy and transformation consultancy, and I'm a leadership coach. And René and I are partner coaches for leaders who are running bold agendas of transformative change. Today, we'll focus on leadership coaching in times of organizational transformation. Let's get started. René, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time, and I'm so looking forward to this discussion. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. I feel super privileged to be here in your program, and I'm excited about it. So I'm doing well.
So, René, I was saying at the beginning when I was introducing you that I had the sincere privilege of meeting you when I was going through my own coaching journey at American University, and you were fortunately one of the instructors that I had there. And I thought that your journey to coaching was really an interesting story that seemed to give you the opportunity to find kind of your passion in terms of coaching. So I thought maybe we could just take a couple of minutes and let you talk through how you got into coaching, what drove you here, what keeps you here, and how do you think about your journey going forward?
Yeah, thanks a lot. So, my background, I started my career as a tax lawyer, worked in different countries, and after several rounds of different things I did in my professional life, I finished working in private banking in Switzerland. And as a leader in the private banking organization, I was dealing with large family systems, and I had good technical knowledge to help them with their wealth management and structures that they needed in order to protect their wealth and how to sustain their wealth and how to build dynasties. Very often when I was sitting with those families, I realized there was something else going on. There were I call that, there was an elephant standing in the room where I was with the family members, and I didn't know how to deal with that elephant, that kind of emotion, that underlying, unspoken emotion that was in the family room. So what I felt is that while I was advising those families, I was not serving them at their best. Why? Because actually I was quite scared to address the elephant. By doing that, I felt I would maybe step on a landmine, it would explode in my face, and, the people would not respect me. So that set me on a journey to try to understand more. It's kind of what drives large systems, family systems, what drives emotions, what is it? And that set me on a course to study neuroscience and sociology and team effectiveness. I even studied sports psychology just to try to understand what makes teams, large groups, tick. And out of that grew my interest for coaching. I never thought actually about coaching, but one time I met in Germany a 80-year-old patriarch of a very large and very well-known German company. And he said to me, René, I'm a father to my children, but most of all, today I'm their coach. And that set off with me kind of a chain reaction. And I realized that coaching for me is kind of the wrapper of all that stuff, all my experiences, my life experience, my professional experiences, all that knowledge that I acquired over in my life. I could wrap that within something called coaching. And once I realized that, life was never the same. I shed basically all my other commercial activities I did, and I fully dove into coaching, and I'm so happy. It was the best decision in my life.
And René, I think an interesting idea, of your coaching practice now is the different venues that you coach in. It's pretty fascinating, the range, of people and organizations that you work with. So could you just take a moment and describe that so that as we go into a discussion of coaching, people have a sense of your vantage point?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I work with leaders, executives, business owners, entrepreneurs, people very high in the top leadership of Fortune 500 companies. That's one aspect of my business. Then I work, and it's kind of a specialty of mine, I work with large family dynasties. So large families that own, or I call them enterprise families that own businesses, that either bring me in to check if they're doing well as a family, or if they have problems within the family, kind of these elephants that nobody wants to talk about. Then I work with athletes and sports teams, more in the performance, mental performance space, which is beautiful because there's so much to be learned between the executive world and the sports world. And then I do also quite a lot of pro bono work. I work with underprivileged school kids in Chicago. I work with prisoners here in Uruguay. So it's a wide variety of things that I do. When I feel that's meaningful to me, I take it on as a challenge.
And René, maybe you can tell folks where you live today. I'm not sure that they would necessarily understand by our easy virtual encounter here that you're not in New Jersey with me.
Yeah, and I love that, and that's also why I love coaching so much. And I'll come back to that. But today I'm living in Uruguay, in Montevideo. I've been living here for the last 22 years. Uruguay is a small country on the Atlantic Ocean between Argentina and Brazil, are the neighboring countries. There are 3.5 million people living here. It's very empty. It's very clean. It's very natural. Um, it's actually the country that does best in all of Latin America. It's considered one of the best democracies actually in the world. I think it's rated 14 of countries with best democracies. It's the safest country in Latin America. It has the highest GDP of Latin America. All houses are connected with fiber optics, and the kids they get from the government a computer when they're young. So there's democracy of information. Um, a great country to live, and that's what I call home now for the last 23 years. And I think it was a good choice for me and my family.
Good for you. Good for you. I think you even have the benefit, if I recall from our coaching days, of being somewhat close to the water there too, right, René?
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
I love to look at the water and see it and be close to the sea. So that's great.
So let's go into our coaching discussion, because the thing that's great about coaching, right, René, is what you're describing, among other things, that you can be, involved in teams and coaches, families from around the world. Your coaching takes you everywhere, right, René? And sometimes I know you travel there and do it in person, but I imagine that a lot of the coaching that you do is also done virtually, throughout the year. Is that true, René?
Yeah, and that makes me think, and that's probably one of the things that I find so fascinating about my work. I love to work internationally. I love to work cross-culturally. I was privileged during my life to visit and work in many countries. And through my coaching, I'm a world traveler every day. So when I start early in the morning, my first clients typically are from Hong Kong or Singapore. Then I move to clients in India and Dubai, and from there I jump to Europe, and I'm talking with clients in Milan, Paris, Madrid, London, Amsterdam. And then late in the afternoon, I jump over the Atlantic for clients in New York, Washington, and Florida, North Carolina, and Los Angeles. And in all these different environments, through these collaborative and creative conversations, I help people to discover what really drives them, what are their blind spots, what stops them from achieving the results they want, and help them figure out to discover their emotional agility to get there. So for me, that's really, truly fascinating, and it drives me every day when I wake up.
I can honestly say, too, given the times that you and I work together, that I never even really think about where you are and what time of the day it is. I just reach out to you, and somehow or another you're there and awake. So I'm not quite sure how you do it, René, but I'm going to let that go. And
that's called passion.
there
Seriously.
You go. There you
the
go.
only reason that you will see me maybe different is since we are now getting to summer, it's warm here. And so I'm in the pleat shirt, shirt sleeves, and, and when I'm in sweater, I'm in wintertime somewhere in this globe. So
that's my telltale sign that you're not at home.
yes.
So, René, let me get into kind of a general coaching discussion, if I can, before we get into coaching leaders and coaching the different teams that you work with. And, one fundamental belief in coaching that to me was interesting when I got involved in coaching. I don't think I really had a sense of this when I was on the consulting side, not on the coaching side, that there's a fundamental belief, right, René, in coaching, that people are naturally creative and resourceful and whole. Naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. It's something we say, in coaching, and it really does drive the process and approach of coaching, right? Can you take some time and talk about why you think and how you think that concept is so basic to the coaching relationship?
Yeah, and maybe thinking about that, it is also good to take away some confusions that might be there around coaching. And the big difference between coaching and maybe therapy or consulting or mentoring is that I am not in the business of fixing my clients' problems. I believe that the people I work with are smart and they already possess the wisdom and the capacity to get where they want to get. And what I do is to help them to unleash their inner power. And many of my clients are successful and have already achieved impressive milestones in the personal, professional life or in sports competition. But even for clients that are still, let's say, beginning and they're on their path to achieving milestones, none of them I consider as broken and needs fixing. And maybe I like to share that I use a formula in coaching which says performance is potential plus development minus interference. So sometimes my clients are hitting a glass ceiling or they're blocked by the edge. There's an interference sitting in their way which stops them from achieving greatness, from the greatness that they're looking for. So I support them to uncover their strengths and I encourage them to trust in their abilities. And again, this is about empowering them to unleash their power and create a change from within. And so I believe that the people I work with, they already have it. Together we unlock it. And I think that is when you talk about people are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. That's what I'm alluding to.
It's the basis of the relationship going in, right, René? And then it maintains itself throughout your relationship with the team or the coachee.
Right.
Yeah. Another building block, right, René, is the idea of common outcomes or common goals of coaching that, again, are consistent in any coaching encounter, that we might have. And just to get those on the table, the goal of a fulfilling life, the goal of freedom and choice, and finally, the goal of increased effectiveness. So similar to people being capable, these ideas also are a bit of a river that runs through it, if you will, in terms of coaching goals, even though they might manifest themselves differently from individual to individual. So could you just talk about these for a moment in a similar way? How is it relevant? How does it affect your approach to coaching?
That's a truly great question. And all these, let's call them fundamental goals that you talk about. You spoke about fulfilling life, freedom and choice, effectiveness, right? Fundamental goals are ingrained in what I'm doing. And if you want, actually, all of these, they are part of the same chain. They chain into each other. So when you talk about fulfilling life, this is deeply connected with being aligned with your values. So each human being, all of us, has its own set of values. And these can be, for example, freedom or family or security or learning or community or religion. Values, right? You can go to Google and look for values and you will get 300 values. And for sure, some of those values, they are deeply ingrained into your system. So your values actually is the core of what drives you. And your emotions, your feelings are triggered by your values, by your core, right? Let me give you an example. Let's talk about the value of achievement or the value of growth, right? Pretty important values for some people. And let's say that one of your core values is to be on a path of personal and professional growth. That's kind of a deep value of you. And after months of hard work, you finally accomplish a challenging project at work where your manager acknowledged your efforts and praising the dedication you showed and the positive impact it had. And you feel an emotion of pride, right? Now, this pride comes from the fact that achievement and growth are core to what you are. And seeing those values honored is the way that fuels that powerful emotion, that powerful sense of pride. So the feeling of pride comes up because it mirrors directly how deeply you value achievement and growth. So if you look at a fulfilling life, we need to discover your core values. And what will it take for you to honor these core values? And just to make it more clear, whenever you feel sad or whenever you feel unhappy or whenever you feel happy or whenever you feel love or whenever you feel joy, try to figure out which of the values were there that triggered this emotion. It's a very interesting exercise because it will teach you a lot. And then if you go to the second thing you mentioned, the freedom of choice. When we think about the freedom of choice in a coaching concept, it's much more than the freedom to act. It's actually about breaking free from your mental and your emotional limitations. And if we can do this, we allow our clients to experience a greater sense of autonomy and a greater sense of empowerment. Imagine, for example, a client who has always struggled with the belief, I'm not good enough, right? Question that comes up regularly.
Yep.
And these beliefs hold them back from stepping into leadership roles or speaking up in meetings because they fear they don't measure up to the others' expectations. Now, through coaching, they begin to recognize that this belief isn't a reflection of their actual abilities, but rather a mental constraint formed from their past experiences. And this is the lens through which they see themselves. And by reframing this belief and focusing on their strengths, they will start to let go of the idea that they're not good enough. And this shift unlocks a sense of self-assurance, and it empowers them to take on a lead role in a new project and express their ideas openly. Now that they're experiencing freedom, not only in action, but also in feeling worthy and capable of achieving their goals. So in coaching, I encourage clients to examine their limiting beliefs, the emotions connected to past decisions, or maybe pressures from the outside that may be limiting their sense of choice. So, and then coming to the third one of that heavy chain, right? The increased effectiveness it is for my clients to establish clear goals and action plans that they can commit to. And, in the end, and this is really important in coaching, my client has to do the work. I'm not doing their work. They have to do the work. I'm their coach. I'm standing with them, but they have to do the work. And I'm there to support them and to brainstorm with them about what are the resources that might be helpful for them. But in the end, the client has to do the work in between the sessions. And this is not very different, maybe, when you think about a personal trainer that maybe you see once a week. And, you do some exercise during 1 hour, he exhausts you, you do all the stuff, and then he gives you a schedule. And if you don't keep to the schedule, if you don't challenge yourself to work through the moments of discomfort, maybe some physical pain, you will never improve. And coaching is a little bit like that, with the difference that I don't give my clients a schedule. I don't give them homework, but I think the analogy works quite nicely.
This is the idea, right, René, in terms of the goal setting and the action planning and the supportive idea of coaching throughout the realization of that plan, that we all refer to when we say the coachee is doing the work, right? We're helping them hold themselves accountable. We're helping them see the connection of their activities to goals, to values, and to the barriers, or friction that they have that gets in the way of them achieving it. It's not that the coach role isn't a huge catalyst role, because it clearly is, but at the end of the day, it's pretty differentiating in terms of the roles between the coach and the coachee. Yeah?
Correct. Yes, absolutely. And I can explain you some of the methodology that we use that makes actually the coach do that, right? So what we do typically in a coaching session, try to imagine this is a loop. Okay, the coaching, it's a loop. It's a wheel. It's not a rat race. Okay, it's not like a hamster running in his cage, but it's a loop, right? And there are kind of four things we do. We conceptualize, we experiment, we reflect, and we integrate. Okay? And that's kind of how the loop works. And, after integration comes again conceptualization, experimentation, reflection, integration, conceptualization, a loop. So first we conceptualize and experience, or we conceptualize an experience that occurred. For example, I worked with a senior leader in a large healthcare system, and the feedback that she got is that she doesn't listen very well. She takes decisions without listening to her subordinates or her peers, and as a result of that, people actually don't feel safe with her, and this somehow stops organizational growth. So we conceptualize that idea, right? This comes out, we talk about it, and what would mean to deeply listen to my direct reports at a leadership team meeting, right? Now, after the coaching session, my client experienced this, for example, active listening, right? We listen better. And so she experiments the second stage. And then she comes back to the next coaching session where she says that she tried active listening, but she couldn't stop from giving strong opinions, right? So we reflect together on why this happens. And maybe it comes out that she used to drive the meetings and the strategy, and she and like not giving strong opinions, like feeling as a loss of control, right? So now we have a new insight. We have loss of control. So we integrate this insight of loss of control into my client's interview of the world, which then could help her to change her perception on how to get to a successful meeting outcome. And we start again. So by doing that, and that means that these are kind of stages. In between those stages, my client has to do the work. I'm not going to active listen for her. I'm not going to be in that meeting, right? So coaching only works if the client has a clear action plan and can commit to the action plan.
René, you talk in your example, there's so many current ideas about the one example that you gave. So maybe I can take that and parlay it into this discussion about why are leaders today seeking coaching, and why, René, is coaching such a popular idea. And so if I can, just for a moment, if you don't mind, follow some of the breadcrumbs that you said, loss of control, moving to an influence-based leader when commanding control systems or approaches don't work anymore, actively listening, and making sure you understand the perspective of your teams. These are all, as you know, these are all leadership traits now of digital age leaders that are, well understood, well documented anyways, So my question is this change of the leadership role one of the things that's driving people into coaching from your perspective? Why has it gotten so popular? And is there anything maybe since COVID or other from your perspective, business or societal triggers that have also, lent to some of the changes, or at least situations that you're seeing people leaders seek out coaching?
Yeah. And this is such an interesting, you know, development that's happening. When I started to coach, I think the ICF, which is the International Coaching Federation, which is the largest self-regulated coaching federation in the world. I think at that time there were 40,000 members, and I'm talking about a couple of years ago, and today it has 53,000 certified coaches in the membership. So the coaching community is expanding, but also the demand. So there's, like anything in the economy, there's supply and demand. So the supply of coaches is expanding quite a lot. I mean, since I started actively in coaching, I would say it has been growing with maybe 30%, but the demand outpaces the supply of coaches. And I think the main reason is that the world became much more complex during COVID and post-COVID. So first of all, leaders had to deal with the uncertainty during COVID, which was pure tactical, because they had to react on a daily basis to changes and environments that had huge impacts globally on organizations. And they were in this reactive mode because there was uncertainty and you couldn't plan very much if you don't know how tomorrow is going to look like, right? And it was exhausting. And it created huge shifts in many aspects. The way we work together, home office, the way people have to sustain themselves at home, and sometimes with kids around or not, or all the challenges of working from home versus working from the office. And then after COVID, we had to start with dealing with let's call it the new normal. So we have this new hybrid work model that is going to stay with many organizations in one form or another. Even though organizations want to get back to a 5 days in the office work week, it's not going to happen. There will be at least one day more that you'll be at home. Or I work with global organizations and they say, I need you twice a week in the office. You decide when. And they do very well. They have great results. They have great growth. I mean, and now this obviously created new work habits and also big disruptions. And basically now, if you are a company in Chicago, you don't need all your people to be from Chicago. They can be from New Delhi. They can be from Paris. They can be from London. You can look for the best talent, and it is they're present. Take our interview. You're sitting in the northern hemisphere, I'm sitting in the southern hemisphere, right? So not only did we have new work habits and disruptions, COVID and the new after COVID gave an enormous push to technology. And the introduction of artificial intelligence is almost as violent and disruptive, but maybe let's call it in a positive sense, as COVID. So leaders, they are working through unprecedented shifts. And that are maybe comparable to the shifts that happened in 1929 or the Second World War. Really, we are going through huge moments. And so it's logical that they like to find a safe space where they can have deep conversations that helps them clarify their thinking and creating new insights and awareness. And also the fact that we are now so accustomed to working with online communication tools like Teams and Zoom, this has been very helpful because a leader can now choose the coach that he feels best with, regardless of the place they're living. And And it's much more an on-demand thing than in the past, where your coach would probably, live in the same town.
Right.
Because,
Right.
for example, the way I like to work with my clients now is that they have 24/7 access to me. Sometimes they have an important board meeting or a hard conversation with someone, and they call me for a short prep conversation. And you know, this is very different, this dynamic, than can you come over? I'm the coach living on Broadway and my client is on 54th and 3rd. I can come over, right? If that will be the case. But if my client is in Chicago or Los Angeles or in Red Eye, North Carolina or Miami, it's a different story, right? And so there's much more, a much stronger possibility for presence for coaching. It became so much easier to access your coach. And I think that that helps very much for leaders to have that coach and, like coaching, but also like a thought partner.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, the choices that we have now in picking and finding a coach that we really want to develop a long-term relationship with, they can be anywhere. They can be anywhere, and that's the great thing. If I can just hang on what you're saying for a moment, Renee, I feel like the way that we might talk about, in a macro sense, the dimensions or the factors that you're pointing to, the disruption, the amount of change that leaders are dealing with, the disconnected or disengaged workforce as people are not right in front of us anymore, so on and so forth. These are all factors, right, Renee, of how we think about the organizational system or the system that we find people in or people find themselves in when we enter with coaching. We refer to that, right, as the organizational system that people are trying to operate in and live in and be successful in. And a lot of that, right, Renee, is the changing nature of people's relationships, particularly at work, the role of the leader, the changing nature of human work, the changing expectations of the workers themselves, people looking for purpose, people looking for agency and autonomy, the restructure of the human work so that, we find meaning and creativity in the work that people do. So the organizational systems and structures that are changing right before our eyes in a very, macro sense become the setting, that we're coaching in, right, Renee? And we're trying to coach leaders into, the new roles and new relationships that they now need to nurture. They now need to nurture and foster in order to really be successful there. So, your thoughts on that, Renee? Do you see it that way? Do you see it as, these organizational systems that are so important and the changing nature of the human dynamic in the organization?
Yeah, absolutely right to the point. I work with several leaders who are being pinpointed by the board of their companies as potential candidates to become the next CEO of the company. And so obviously these people, these individuals, are very good at what they do. I mean, they would not be in the position and in the potential position to become the CEO, and they wouldn't be in the position where they are today, right? So why do they come to coaching, right? They are so good already. But their bigger challenge lies not with what they're doing. Let's say they're CEO of the company. They really manage operations very well, right? But it is the larger organizational context. And in order to support them in the preparation for the next step and where they have to work and to deal with complete different dimensions of stakeholders, such as board alignments, market dynamics, investor relationships, Wall Street, and so on, but also with the larger public and the community and regulatory environment. So in the coaching, I encourage to have my clients to understand the broader system and its impact on their choices. How can they positively influence cultural shift in their organizations? How can they make others follow their vision? What is their storytelling about? Storytelling is so important. Yeah. So I fully agree with
It's almost the backdrop, right, Renee, the backdrop of the new business, I'll call it ecosystem, in the context of, in the backdrop of the new business ecosystem, which is as you and I have talked about many times, it's a people, planet, prosperity, purpose ecosystem.
Yes.
It's all of those, right?
Absolutely.
Stakeholder capitalism is in there, our concerns for the environment and making sustainable choices and sustainable business decisions, et cetera. They all get rolled into, this new business ecosystem. And now we're, leading with very few boundaries here, porous walls, across all what used to be separate domains, right?
All the walls are off, Mimi.
Yeah.
There are no more walls.
No doubt. No doubt. I say porous walls, porous walls. It's just, seeping across everything. So, hopefully Renee will be optimist here and say that, coaching will be one of the catalysts to finding our humanity in these new systems, and the satisfaction of that. I certainly think that that's at least part of what we think we might do here. Your thought?
I love that. Yes. Thank you.
So, Renee, can I ask, before we leave this, leadership coaching discussion, assessments, just a couple of quick questions if I can. Assessments are always a part of the leadership methodology. Can you just touch on that for a moment? The value of assessments, how you use them, why you use them, what insights you think they really provide, both to the coachee, and also to the coach.
Yeah. And I just had a conversation before we jumped into this podcast with a people's manager in a Fortune 500 company, and we spoke about the value of assessments because they're so helpful. It helps me in a short time frame to get lots of data around my client. I probably would also come to this data in the coaching sessions, but it would take much more time, and therefore it's less efficient. So I especially love to do 360 interviews, as it gives me great depth of how my clients show up through the eyes of the others. And this is a fundamental aspect in leadership, because you can think the best of yourself, but much more important is the reputation that others hold for you, right? So, there's the assessment issue it's something which is fundamental. I love to work with lots of data around my client. The more data I have, the better I can be of service to my clients. So I make it a part of whatever I do with clients. I do assessments beforehand. I don't dive in cold, because in the end it will cost my client more time and money to get to the same results. So assessments for me, they are founding.
A valuable tool, right, Renee? Like, assessments become a valuable tool, but we want to be careful we don't over rely on, assessments that, can take too limited of a perspective in terms of, what's really happening relative to this person's success on the ground every day, right? We need to get a bit on the ground to see what that looks like.
Yeah. And so very often clients, they find some blind spots they have not expected out of these assessments, and they agree with that. But sometimes, we do not build all our coaching goals based on the assessment. Maybe there are already some things that they had beforehand they want to work on, and maybe some things that do not show up that loud and clearly in the assessment. But it's very helpful.
So given all of your experience here, Renee, just kind of a funny question. I wonder whether you've ever had a coachee from some definition of failing out of coaching with you happen. Like, is that ever happened? Is that a never or an uncommon thing? And if it happens, why does it happen?
Right. So I never had to give back any of my coaching fees to a coachee.
There you go.
That's my Dutchness
that's a
coming
good
out.
definition.
I'm Dutch. I need to talk about money and how not to spend it. No, but truly, I never had a client where we came to the conclusion that coaching is not working for them. They were, let's say, where they felt that the coaching was not the right pathway. However, there's some distinction I want to make when you use the word to fail. And in coaching, we don't grade our clients. There's no pass or fail situation. It is as it is. So I take my clients as they are. I don't judge them. There's not a good or a bad client. It just is. And there has always been a positive shift out of the coaching. With some clients, more shift in a shorter periods, and with other clients, it took some more time. And some clients, they got further than others. But kind of failing, never. Always there's been some insight, some forward movement.
Renee, how long would you say, if there's a typical, period of time that you might spend coaching a leader, just to give people a sense of how long do these programs tend to run, if there's anything, kind of predictable about them?
Yeah. So the minimum individual coaching assignment is 4 months, let's say between 4 to 6 months. But having said that, currently there are also several clients with whom I work that I've been working for more than 3 years. I'm, let's say, session 75. Obviously, in those long-term relationships, the pure coaching relationship shifts into something else, maybe more like, I like to call it the consigliere, no?
Yeah.
But and so that's with individual coaching assignments. With family systems, the typical time frame is between 6 months to 2 years. And with sports teams, it can be unlimited as they are in conscious change themselves. Consistently changing themselves. For example, there's one national sports selection that I've been working with as a mental performance coach for the last 3 years. So it depends. It depends on the context, the situation. But if it's individual with a leader, it's 4 to 6 months, typical.
Renee, let's move over to team coaching, because you spend a lot of your time coaching teams, even different types of teams. So maybe we can start with the difference between coaching an individual, more often than not leader, coaching an individual leader versus coaching teams. So what's the big difference between that? And then we can maybe talk a little bit about, in different types of teams, the difference between when you're doing business team coaching and perhaps other constructs of teams.
Yeah. So there's not so much of a difference in the sense of the coaching itself, because when I coach a team, I coach it as a whole, as if it were an individual unit, if you want to call it like that. So like an individual, a team has also goals and a purpose. And with individual coaching, it's centered around personal growth, while team coaching is centered around the team growth, the team goals, the team cohesion, the team effectiveness, which is based on positivism and productivity. And so in both cases, you leverage on strengths, on learning, and on adapting. And that's very similar. Obviously, with teams, it's harder because there's a lot going on at the same time. And you have to be sensitive to the power dynamics and communication patterns that are, relevant within a team. But like individual coaching, team coaching is about creating psychological safety, which is obviously a little bit more complex in a team, and you need a bit more time to create it. But the idea of psychological safety for the team as an individual unit or your client, it's to make them feel comfortable and to express themselves. And within the team, it's expressing themselves in front of others. But the basics are the same. And also maybe in a team coaching, the sessions are typically longer than in an individual coaching session, where sessions are between 45 minutes, 1.5 hours. Team coaching is typically 3 hours, or can be 1 or 2 days, right? And also in team coaching, there's more kind of a facilitator aspect, where you help your team to the team members to go through structured discussion. So there's a lot of overlap. There are some distinctions between the individual team coaching. But the important aspect to take away is when I do team coaching, the team is a unit. Okay, so it's not 7 or 8 individuals; it's a unit, and so that what it makes it in many respects similar to individual coaching. Now you asked me about the distinction between let's make that an athletics teams and a business team, right? And I love that question because I like to work in both realms. Because there's so much to be learned from one world that I can apply in the other world and vice versa. So both teams, corporate teams and sports teams, they exist to create results, full stop. Teams exist to create results, right? And in order to achieve that, they have to be effective. And for this team to be effective, the dynamics and trust have to be top-notch. In order to be successful, both teams need to be productive. And in order to make teams also sustainable, they should have positivism. So how do you create that? By trust, by good communication, by conflict resolution, by transparency, by respect, by great leadership. So in both teams, there must be role assignments and clarity about that, what they're doing in a sports team, like in a corporate team, and there has to be accountability around that. And in both teams, what you need, there has to be low levels of interference. They, basically, when I talk about sports teams, but you can make the analogy directly for corporate teams, you have to be in the game. You have to keep your eyes on the ball and not being in your mind somewhere else than being with your mind on the ball. That's the same in both worlds. And also,
René, this goes back to the point, I'm sorry to interrupt you. This goes back to the point that you made at the beginning, right? In terms of the equation around, what drives performance, because that's what we're talking about here. Right. Is individual or business team or other constructs of teams, sports or otherwise. The outcome, how we would measure it, would be the context of that individual or team's performance in the context of the system that they're running their game plan in.
Yeah, there's one big distinction, obviously, that the sports teams, the pressure is for immediate results. Sports teams have 4 quarters, or 90 minutes if soccer, 80 minutes is rugby, where they have to give it all, and their KPI is immediate.
Yeah.
With corporate teams, the time frame is longer. It can be months or quarterly or even years, right? And so with sports teams, the competition is very direct, on and off the field, every day. They do secret trainings, the athletes. In the gym, on the training field, they're competing against themselves and against teammates, right? And with corporate teams, that's more indirect. And, you look at stakeholder satisfactions and quarterly results and maybe product to market time, market shares, and whatever you like to measure a corporate team of. And there's another issue there that the performance of the sports team is publicly scrutinized in real time and globally, if you wish. If you participate in a world championship where 250 million people are watching, or you participate in the Olympics, there's a lot of direct pressure. And that's quite different with corporate teams, right? So I would say kind of these are big decisions. I can go on this I'm very passionate about this. I can go for a long time. But
René, we just have a few minutes left, but I want to squeeze in just a couple of questions, and I want to end with your best advice for business leaders. But my last question is how coaching supports organizational culture. I mean, as we know, developing culture that's resilient, that's sustainable, that can deal with holding a long state of ambiguity, which is something that, our leaders as well as the whole workforce is being challenged with now, given the uncertainty of the second and third step until we take the first one and see where the road leads. So my question is, how do we think about the value of coaching, direct or indirect, to realizing a more positive organizational culture in the long run?
Yeah, and this is so important. And this is the whole concept, which I think that is going to distinguish and be a distinguishing agent in coaching. And that's kind of, you have coaches, they do individual coaching, and which is wonderful, and they do amazing work and so on. But if you disconnect the individual coaching from the larger organizational culture, from the change that the organization wants to work through, that's kind of where I think you find sometimes disconnect in the coaching. So let's take a big organization that's going through change. Change can be violent for many, right? And with any change, it doesn't matter, you'll always find people that are holdouts, people that are against it. I make a silly example. Let's say the company says everybody is going to earn $100,000 more. Well, a lot of people, they will come home with a happy face, right? In the evening. There will still people be resisting to that change. So change, there's always difference. And I think there's such a space for coaching when organizations go through change, like they're going today. Artificial intelligence, it will change a huge amount of things. We already went just through the disruption of COVID and the new normal and the new way of working, and suddenly you have colleagues all over the world and they're competing with you, right? In the past, you would be competing with the guys around the block. Now you're competing with people from other continents. And so these big shifts, these huge shifts we're going through, coaching needs to be aligned with that. They need to understand what's happening in this organization. What's the strategy? What does this organization wants to grow to? And then you build a great coaching program. So the people you're coaching, it is aligned with where the organization needs to grow through and what do they need to do from their part to bring down that vision also to the other people that are, at peer level or subordinates or however you want to look at it from a pyramidal perspective. But let's say coaching without understanding the deeper organizational change, I think is not as effective as that coaching aligned with the organizational change.
I think this is maybe one of the biggest things, René, that you and I, have spent our time talking about, since we met each other and started aligning some of our practice work here. It's this idea of organizational transformation, right? The strategy of organizations as the tremendously important context for individual leadership coaching, right? Where we might have been able to have seen the individual leader coaching as a largely separate idea. We see now these systems and structures in the organization changing so dramatically, and the concept of finding the North Star in purpose and finding the commonality with leaders across strategic intent, so that when we go into execution and we're trying to get coaching to help people be able to execute on the vision, purpose, strategy of the organization, we're just tightly aligned there. We're tightly coupled there in terms of people in those systems working in harmony. So we're not fighting the system. We're trying to work with it. So it becomes a human-centric system, if you will, going forward.
I love that. And it has to be human-centric. Maybe one day we wake up and it all becomes artificial intelligence-centric, but we still have a long time to go. And if we don't understand that it's human-centric, we're for big problems. And and trouble. And you can see that with organizations that are not performing well, they have exactly that issue.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's human-centric by design and not by default, right, René? It's
Exactly.
human-centric by design, not by default. So René, final words of wisdom here, given all of the opportunity that you have to work with so many global leaders and influencers around the world, to our audience, which is, our business leaders. What are the couple of recommendations or pieces of advice that you'd leave behind to people that might be considering coaching for themselves, coaching for their team, or coaching for, select or certain members of the organization? Final departing thoughts?
Yeah. So that's a hard question. It's not hard, but kind of there are several thoughts, and I just give you my 5 cents of wisdom, right? But it's kind of something I work a lot with leaders in organizations, and when you are the number one in an organization, the CEO of an organization, the chairman of the board, whatever it is, you're the founding partner. It's about creating a vision and build a narrative around this vision that people can see and will be able to follow. People must see the why, and especially in changes, they need to see the why of the change. If the why of the change is not clear, then the organizations will be handicapped by a large amount of skeptical, cynical, mistrusting, passive-aggressive individuals. And we know that doesn't help any organization. So first, create a vision and build a great narrative around that vision. The next one is build trust. Connect the vision to the people by open and consistent communication. Organize town halls and create the buy-in from the people. Because if the people do not support it, it's like having a fifth column in your organization. And it becomes tiresome, and the organization burns out, the people burn out. And the third is, so we have vision, we have these conversations, and now you think, okay, I have the vision, I have the narrative, what's a great narrative, I could explain to people why I'm there. No. The third one is to communicate, and communicate.
Right.
I mentioned the word communication. When
Right.
you as a leader think you communicated, you probably didn't communicate enough. Be transparent in the communication and be consistently clear in the message that you want to relay without any ambivalence. These are maybe the 3 things that I would like to, my 5 cents of wisdom. There's so many other, amazing people with much greater wisdom than I have, but this is what I see. Visionary work, a narrative of this work that explains the why, listen to people in the town halls, go out there, talk with people, and then communicate, and communicate more. That's
I love it, René.
5
I love it.
cents.
I think that it's 10 cents. I think it's 10 cents worth. I think it's a lot. And I think that as we've spoken about, it's amazing, how many organizations that we work with where the fracture sits at this top idea of why and cascading the why through the organization. And when it breaks there, it just breaks in every subsequent layer, underneath it. So
From
I think
a almost biblical analogy, it's what you need as a leader. You need to create apostles that will bring out your message. You need a strong group of people that believe in your message and are prepared to move that message onward. It's the most powerful thing. You can have those incredible PowerPoint presentations and corporate presentations and whatever. You need very strong backers.
Yeah.
That will give everything to give out the message. You create
The
that,
advocates
you're done.
around. Yeah,
You're set for success.
exactly. I love it. I love it. René, it's always great speaking with you. I think that you've brought, tremendous clarity, I'm sure, for our audience on the value of coaching, and shared a lot of the diversity of your experience and passion. And I appreciate that a lot. Thank you so much for coming on. I look forward to seeing you again soon, and hope to bring you back, for more of a discussion going forward. We could talk forever.
I think we could talk forever, Mimi. It was a pleasure, and as I mentioned, a privilege to be here. And thank you for your insightful questions. I loved our conversation, so I enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. You take care. Safe travels. I'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you.